Hi, I'm Jean Kitchen with the Blowing Rock Civic Association.
And I'm Tom O'Brien with the Blowing Rock Historical Society.
Tom, last year in 2022, we launched for the first time a series of video vignettes that featured the interesting, very fascinating history of Blowing Rock.
They were fantastic, and this one is going to be just as good, maybe even better than that. You know, it's interesting, there's so many new people that have come to Blowing Rock that don't know very much about our history. They don't understand why the town is what it is today, the marvelous place to live. So part of bringing our history to life in these videos is to educate people about why we're the great community that we are. And I have to tell you, Blowing Rock has a very rich and colorful history. It can be fun and entertaining, as people will see in this video.
Well, and you of all people have seen that, like with the historical walk now that's got all these wonderful plaques all over that lead people on an interesting walk, learning about our past. So
that's going to be a lot of fun. We just opened that yesterday.
Absolutely wonderful. And Dr. Buxton was able to find 8 fabulous women who made tremendous contributions.
And ideally, this video has been named the Queens of Blowing Rock because these 8 women were just, they're princesses and queens. They were so wonderful to our community. It's funny, they have diverse backgrounds, Jean, but all of them have several things in common. Each of them loved our community. Each of them made significant contributions, and especially were conscious of people that didn't have as much as they did. They did so much to help people that were in need.
From an educational perspective, with starting schools, from the perspective of even artists who designed the emblem on Girl Scout cookies. I mean, there's just, you're going to be fascinated with all the different talents that these ladies invested right here in our community.
Let's take a look at the first queen.
Okay.
She was born with the proverbial silver spoon. I mean, it was to a family of great wealth and power and prestige in Alabama. Yet, from the very beginning, she was different. She believed that women of wealth and power should step down from their pedestals and reach down deep to help those in need. Her character was shaped by many things. I think first and foremost, her parents' example of philanthropy and love for the community. Her faith was also very important to Susie, and also her social awakening that I think occurred a little bit later in her life. Susie Parker Stringfellow grew up in this beautiful mansion in Anniston, Alabama. The opulence of the dwelling suggests the wealth and power commanded by Susie's father, Duncan T. Parker, who was president of the First National Bank. Susie was petite, with brilliant blue eyes, and she exuded blue-blooded charm. She was no stranger, however, to tragedy. In 1889, she lost both her mother and brother to pneumonia. Some months later, her father moved to New York City, where he too died 1 year later in 1890. Susie inherited the family wealth and became a power for good in both Blowing Rock and in Anniston, Alabama. In 1882, Cupid struck, and Susie married handsome William Stringfellow. They purchased Chatola, a Cherokee word meaning haven of rest, and became summer residents of Blowing Rock. William suffered from tuberculosis, and Susie insisted the cooler climate of Blowing Rock would improve her husband's health. The Stringfellows were very close friends of Elliot Dangerfield and knew of his summers spent in Blowing Rock. The Stringfellows hosted many opulent parties at Chatola and were close friends with Blowing Rock's social elite. While they enjoyed Blowing Rock's social scene and loved to entertain, They were devout Episcopalians and very active in the Blowing Rock Episcopal Church. Susie was a Sunday school teacher and treasurer of the church. Now, having no children of her own, she took a special interest in the children of Blowing Rock. She organized the Blowing Rock School Betterment Association, the Civic Improvement League, the Blowing Rock Exchange, and the local branch of the Campfire Girls. She donated generously to the Red Cross, Grandfather Home, and the Watauga County Home. In 1918, she donated the funds to build a new Episcopal church, now St. Mary's Church, but then known as the Stringfellow Memorial Church. Following a trip around the world, Susie and W.W. built a beautiful new home in Anniston they named Awasenza, which is an Italian word meaning friendship. Sadly, Susie died in 1920 at the age of 51 before their new home was completed.
It would be no exaggeration to say that Susie Parker Stringfellow changed the world. Her gift, her legacy is connected to the hospital in Alabama, the Stringfellow Memorial Hospital, that has helped change that part of the world. But she also funded the Community Foundation of Northeast Alabama, which over the years has donated millions of dollars to help people in need in Alabama. Yes, now we've talked about Alabama, but let's not forget her contributions to our own community here in Blowing Rock. Her involvement, her leadership, her philanthropy helped change our world, and that is an amazing story.
The following words, written by Judge George W. Gage of the South Carolina Supreme Court, is dedicated to Susie Stringfellow. These words are inscribed on a plaque inside St. Mary's Church. And I quote him, "She was an admirer of the beautiful, a lover of the good, a defender of the right, a foe to injustice, and a helper of distress wherever she found it."
Tom, I think it's really interesting that an aristocratic family from Alabama came up to this remote village of Blowing Rock and settled here and contributed so much.
You know, it really is interesting, and I understand from Dr. Buxton's book, A Village Tapestry, the reason he did that was because he was very dear friends with Elliot Dangerfield, the renowned artist. And Elliot, you know, apparently told him something about Blowing Rock and its health benefits.
Well, you ready to see the next queen?
I am really ready to see the next queen.
Okay, let's watch.
Determination, courage, intelligence, and an amazing sense of humor. These are but a few of the hallmarks of Dr. Mary Cable Warfield. Dr. Mary Cable Warfield was Blowing Rock's first female physician. Her father was the highly respected Dr. E.D. Warfield, president of Lafayette College in Pennsylvania. She was the second born of 6 highly accomplished children. Her younger brother, Ben, was a professor of theology at Princeton University. Mary attended the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, one of only 2 medical schools in the entire country in the early 1900s that was exclusively for women. She first visited Blowing Rock in 1928 and immediately fell in love with the area. At that time, she was the resident physician
and professor of anatomy at Converse College in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It soon became obvious that Mary Warfield and mountain people were a match made in heaven. Her unassuming, casual manner and her constant companion, a German Shepherd dog, made her easily approachable. It's a good thing because she was the only doctor within a 10-mile radius. In 1930, the Warfield Clinic was established in Blowing Rock on the south end of Main Street. Dr. Warfield had a special interest in pediatrics, and the clinic soon became known to locals as simply the Baby Clinic. Dr. Warfield accepted no pay for work performed in the Baby Clinic. She felt this pro bono work was part of her duty as a physician. Over a span of almost 2 decades in Blowing Rock, she delivered hundreds of babies.
You know, I have a very personal connection to Dr. Warfield because she delivered 5 of my siblings in this modest building behind us. My brothers Thomas and Trask, and my sisters Anne, Mary, and Martha. And mixed in there were 2 sets of twins.
The Warfield Clinic was warmly embraced and supported by the citizens of Blowing Rock. This included annual village concerts by Metropolitan Opera star and seasonal resident Norman Corden, and the country club concerts organized and underwritten by charlatan David Ovens. Sadly, Dr. Warfield died in 1953 at the relatively young age of 58 years old. But in her lifetime, she literally changed this community. She reached back into the coves and hollows of the mountains with an effort to try to bring modern medicine to Appalachia. She was a hero in any measure of the word, and that's why I regard her as Blowing Rock's Florence Nightingale.
Gene, can you believe that Dr. Warfield delivered 5 of Barry's siblings? That's incredible.
It is, and there were 2 sets of twins. I mean, that's just amazing itself. But the big thing to me, Tom, is that was before disposable diapers. I mean, this was a long time ago. So
wow, that's a lot of diaper changing.
It is, and what an incredible lady. Let's see who the next wonderful lady is.
Perfect.
I have a question for you, the audience. How do you define greatness? How do you define greatness? What is great? You know, the ancient Roman philosopher Seneca said that it is a very, very rough and challenging road that leads to greatness. Oprah Winfrey, she encouraged women to think like a queen because a queen is never afraid to fail. Failure is but a stepping stone to greatness. Benjamin Disraeli, the former British Prime Minister, had something very important to say about greatness. He said that a great person is someone who affects the mind of their generation. Okay, so what is greatness? How about a woman who established 15 schools throughout Appalachia and did it all after the age of 50 years old? A woman who had a burning desire to help others, to provide opportunity for the less fortunate throughout Appalachia. Emily Catherine Pruden was one such woman, and certainly a hero by any measure of the word. Now, I'm standing here today behind the old Sandy Flat School and Church because this property is evocative of the types of schools that Emily founded back in the day throughout North and South Carolina.
And by any fair measure, she was truly great. During her rise to greatness, she traveled many rough roads. She demonstrated the courage to fail, and she made a lasting impression on the lives of thousands of poor young Appalachian children. Emily was part of the Protestant missionary movement of the late 19th century. Her zealous commitment to Christian service was a hallmark of the schools she established for both black and white students. Her accomplishments are all the more remarkable in light of the fact that she had been deaf since the age of 17. She began her work in North Carolina in 1884 when she purchased 50 acres in Gaston County. Her first school was Jones Seminary, that later became Linwood College. In 1888, she established Lincoln Academy for black females. From this beginning, she went on to found schools at Blowing Rock, Connolly Springs, Saluda, Elk Park, Mill Springs, Cedar Valley, Lawndale, Brevard, Tryon, and Lenoir. Oberlin Home and School later became Pfeiffer University. Miss Emily was remarkably resourceful and self-effacing. She unselfishly devoted her money, time, and talents to enhance educational opportunities for mountain students. A devout Christian, she had an honest, sincere approach to what she considered the Lord's work. She sought to provide the students with a basic education and, as she wrote, trusting in the dear Lord Jesus. Skyland Institute was one of Blowing Rock's most influential early schools. Miss Emily erected classrooms, dormitories, and a chapel. She purchased furniture, books, and school supplies to complete the school. While Skyland was predominantly a boarding school for girls, several boys attended from as far away as Meat Camp. The curriculum consisted mainly of the 3 R's with a healthy dose of spiritual guidance. It was the practice of Ms. Emily to establish a school, remain there long enough to be assured of its continuance, and then deed it to the care of others. In 1890, after 3 years in Blowing Rock, Pruden deeded Skyland Institute to the American Missionary Movement. Skyland eventually closed in 1912, shortly before Miss Emily's death.
You know, Miss Emily will forever be remembered as a champion of the disadvantaged and certainly as one of both North and South Carolina's greatest educators.
Tom, how does any one person establish 15 schools after the age of 50?
She was one incredible special lady.
You think of all the young people whom she had influence over, and that type of influence goes on for generation to generation.
It really does. You know, I wonder, Gene, if the next queen is going to have accomplished as much as Emily Pruden did.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Let's find out.
You know, of all the amazing women who have graced our beloved Blowing Rock over the decades, I think the woman that I would most like to have known is Marjorie J. Dangerfield. She was beautiful, talented, elegant, and of course very sophisticated. And we know her perhaps best as the eldest daughter of her very famous father, the painter Elliot Dangerfield.
You know, I'm reminded of the age-old adage, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Like her father, Marjorie was a very talented artist. Her medium was sculpture, preferring bronze and marble. Marjorie was also an acclaimed teacher and gifted lecturer. She taught at the School of American Sculpture and the Grand Central School of Art in New York. She also lectured at the Mint Museum in Charlotte and at Duke University. For 2 years, she was head of the Department of Sculpture at the beautiful Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. Her book, Fun and Fundamentals of Sculpture, was published by Scribner in 1963. Her younger sister, Gwendolyn, described Marjorie as having a personality you immediately felt when she entered the room. She could hold people enthralled with her stories. She had a wonderful sense of humor. You know, Marjorie won numerous awards, including the Huntington Award for her statue of Martha Graham and the Silver Medal Award for Appassionata. Appassionata was exhibited at the first Blowing Rock Art Show, held at the Green Park Hotel in 1935. In 1952, Marjorie designed and cast a small silver figure of Sir Walter Raleigh, which was presented to Queen Elizabeth II during her visit to the United States. In 1954, Marjorie won the international competition to design an emblem for the Girl Scouts of America. Both Marjorie and Gwendolyn did a great deal to stimulate interest in art in Blowing Rock. Both were patrons of the first Blowing Rock Art Show and served on the Committee of Patronesses. The Blowing Rock Art Association was formed in 1950 to cultivate art in Blowing Rock. Marjorie executed several pieces of sculpture for prominent summer residents of Blowing Rock: Anne Cannon Forsyth and charlatan George M. Ivy.
Perhaps her most acclaimed work, entitled The Offering, now stands here in this very soulful garden on the side of St. Mary's Episcopal Church here in Blowing Rock.
I really wish Gina had known Marjorie. She was an incredible artist, has done so much.
Well, one of the things I didn't know about her is, and I was a Girl Scout and a brownie and all those things, but the emblem on Girl Scout cookies, she designed that.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I wonder if she designed Girl Scout cookies too.
Well, they're mighty good. I hope you're supporting the Girl
I
Scouts.
support the Girl Scouts, especially when they sell cookies.
Absolutely. Well, let's see who our next queen is.
You know, of all of the incredible women who have contributed to our town of Blowing Rock, I don't think there is anyone who has made a more important gift than the gift of this Moses Cone estate. It's spectacular land and beautiful, soulful in so many ways. This gift to our community by Bertha Lindau Cone.
Upon her death in 1947, her will conferred ownership of the Moses Cone estate to the Moses H. Cone Memorial Hospital in Greensboro. It was to be operated as a public park. Hospital trustees ultimately donated the estate to the United States of America, and it became part of the national park system. With over 3,500 acres, including the Cone's summer home, Flat Top Manor, it's not an exaggeration to say that this land, this spectacular place in the Southern Highlands, has touched the soul of thousands of residents and visitors alike. Beauty, solitude, spiritual reflection, walking and jogging, horseback and carriage riding, all to be savored on this beautiful estate. But who was Bertha Lindau Cohn? Born in 1858, she was the eldest of 3 daughters of a prominent Jewish family in Baltimore, Maryland. The Lindaus immigrated from Germany in the 1840s. In the 1880s, the Lindau family became neighbors of the Herman Cohn family in Baltimore. You know, Bertha was known to be intelligent, hardworking, and a woman who excelled in numbers. However, she chose not to attend college. After a 4-year courtship with young Moses Cohn, they married at her parents' home in Baltimore. They would have no children, but Bertha was a constant source of support and encouragement in Moses' successful efforts to build an industrial empire. Headquartered in Greensboro, North Carolina, Cohn Mills would employ hundreds of men and women, and Moses would famously be known as the Denim King. During a 7-year period, Moses and Bertha acquired over 3,500 acres in the Blowing Rock Township. This is the property we know today as the Cohn Estate. They began construction of Flat Top Manor, their summer home, in 1899. In 1906, Bertha and Moses went on a world tour and collected hundreds of works of art to furnish and display at Flat Top Manor. Moses Cohn died prematurely at the age of 51. But what followed is an incredible and most unlikely story. Instead of retiring to Greensboro or Baltimore to live in the comforts and conveniences of city life, Bertha Cohn chose to assume complete day-to-day management of the working Cohn estate. She was reported to have quickly and proficiently learned management skills that very few women of her day would have known. For 39 years, she skillfully and efficiently guided the operation of the estate, dedicated to running it in a manner consistent with her late husband's aspirations. You know, Bertha Cohn demanded perfection in every aspect of the operation of the Cohn estate. She oversaw operation of the Cohn apple orchard and the only Class A dairy in Watauga County. She expanded the estate grounds, adding the Bass Lake Hart Pond and acquiring additional acreage. She also added the iconic Manor House balustrade.
You know, Bertha Cohn's legacy, it not only includes this amazing property, it also includes the Moses H. Cohn Memorial Hospital in Greensboro. Her philanthropy touched so many lives in Blowing Rock. Yes, this property, Sandy Flat School nearby, the Blowing Rock Hospital, and of course, back in the day, the Appalachian Academy, which is now Appalachian State University. You know, but for me, and for thousands of other people, her most lasting gift and most profound gift is the beauty and the majesty of the lakes and the land and the trails of the Moses Cohn estate.
Tom, I had no idea that Bertha Cone lived for 39 years after Moses died. And she ran a pretty tight ship during that time too, didn't she?
You know, Gene, she really did. When Moses died, the textile business went to his brothers. So Bertha's primary asset was Flat Top Manor and that estate that they had built. She was a very good businesswoman. She managed that thing and made money for the family. But she was just a good businesswoman. She had apple orchards. She had a dairy. She employed a huge percentage of the population up here.
Yeah, they were struggling, as we learned, and she just really gave them jobs. But I'm interested in the peach ice cream too. Did you know that she was giving peach ice cream to the children regularly, hand-churned peach ice cream? I would have loved that.
I wish she were still here, because I'd love to have some of her peach ice cream. That would have been really good.
Oh, it would. Well, let's see who our next queen is.
She was the master teacher. Her classroom, the beautiful Rumpel Memorial Church that is behind me. I cannot begin to tell you how she influenced my life and literally the lives of hundreds of other children of Blowing Rock. Her name? Annie Ludlow Cannon. You know, Annie Cannon dedicated her life to religious studies and helping the less fortunate. Through her Good News Bible School and her classroom teaching here at Rumpel Memorial, she taught the Bible to many, many of us, and we were enthralled. But perhaps more importantly is she conveyed a spirit of love and goodwill which indelibly shaped everybody that knew Annie Cannon.
Born on December 9th, 1887, to Dr. Jacob Lott Ludlow, a Pennsylvania engineer, and his wife Myra. She and two sisters grew up in Winston-Salem. She received a liberal arts degree from Agnes Scott College in Atlanta, Georgia. One spring day, while riding on a local passenger train, she met the man of her dreams in young, dashing Joseph Franklin Cannon. Joseph was the son of J.W. Cannon, a native of Concord and one of the founders of the Cannon textile empire. You know, the future of Blowing Rock was forever changed in 1927 when Joseph and Annie Cannon built Miramichi, their summer home located in Mayview Park. Shortly after completion of Miramichi, and Miramichi means happy retreat, Annie Cannon began hosting Sunday evening hymn singings, which were open to everyone in the Blowing Rock community. Annie Cannon was dedicated to the improvement of life in Blowing Rock. During the 1940s, she was instrumental in starting the Blowing Rock Negro Community Church on Possum Hollow Road. She was a leading supporter of Grandfather Home for Children, where buildings are actually named in her honor. You know, for me and many others, she will always be fondly remembered as the Bible teacher whose life exemplified the teachings of Christ. Her talent and gift for teaching were obvious, and she gained recognition as a master teacher from the Child Evangelism Fellowship. She dedicated her teaching to the children of Blowing Rock. Mrs. Cannon's teaching involved the use of scene-a-felts, a method by which felt figures were placed on a flannel board as a Bible story was told. We children sat spellbound as Mrs. Cannon wove her magic from Genesis through Revelations. She also reached out beyond the church to share her teachings with Camp Sky Ranch for crippled children, the Hebron Colony for alcoholic men, and Grace Colony for alcoholic women. Annie Ludlow Cannon loved spending time in her beautiful flower gardens at Miramichi. She also enjoyed horseback riding and was an accomplished equestrian well into her 70s. She was a faithful supporter of the Blowing Rock Charity Horse Show.
She was a true friend to everyone in Blowing Rock, no matter your class or standing in the community. She reached out and touched everybody in Blowing Rock, and that was so important. I think her greatest gift was the example that she set in the community. Her example was one of kindness and love and interest in all levels of our town. She died in Blowing Rock, her beloved Blowing Rock, on March 10th, 1965. And just 5 years later, the leadership of Rumpel Memorial dedicated the new education building in her honor, the Annie Ludlow Cannon Education Building. How appropriate was that to do? So she's not only memorialized here at Rumpel Memorial, she is also memorialized in the beautiful Annie Ludlow Cannon Gardens that is located across the street from Broyhill Lake in Mayview. What an incredible lady.
Gene, I'll bet her Bible class was a lot more fun than my old Sunday school class, and probably more informative too.
Well, she had such a broad influence on hundreds and hundreds of young people with her Good News Bible Club.
That's incredible.
And the kids wanted to come too. I mean, that really speaks volumes.
I know. I didn't exactly always want to go to Sunday school, so I bet she did a better job of motivating those kids. I think Barry has done just a home run on every one of these queens. I wonder who the next one's going to be.
Me too. Let's take a look.
Remember that age-old saying that behind every great man is a great woman? You know, comedian Jim Carrey modified that. I think it's so true. He modified it to say, behind every great man is a great woman rolling her eyes. So true. On a more serious note, Proverbs 31:12 had this to say, "She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life." Maybe because Sadie Hunt Broyhill loved music and studied music at the university, she might prefer the old Tammy Wynette song, "Stand by Your Man." Now behind me is Timber Tops, the beautiful home of the Broyhill family here on the edge of the gorge in Mayview.
Sadie was the epitome of the woman behind the scenes who had the intelligence, wit, charm, faith, and the desire to help propel her man, Ed Broyhill, to greatness. She became the matriarch of one of the most benevolent and philanthropic families in America. But let's back up to the beginning. Sadie was born in July 13th, 1899 to Hartley Hunt and Nellie Stone Hunt in Genesee, Pennsylvania. She was the eldest of 3 daughters. Hartley Hunt was a lumberman for most of his life, and when Sadie was 5 years old, he relocated the family to New Hudson, New York. It was in New York that Sadie received much of her early education. In 1913, when Hartley Hunt accepted an opportunity to continue his work in the timber business with Graydon Lumber in rural western North Carolina. Sadie's world was turned upside down. Her mother, independent-minded Nellie Stone Hunt, refused to leave New York. Nevertheless, Hartley took Sadie and Doris with him, leaving Sister Alice with her mother, and the three began a new life together in Grayton, North Carolina. As the eldest daughter, Sadie felt the most pain in the transition from New York to the wilds of western North Carolina. She was just 13 years old, homesick and lonely, and now without her mother. Characteristic of the always resilient Sadie, in time, she embraced the rural countryside and developed many new friendships. You know, the fortune of our town, Blowing Rock, was forever changed in 1914 when Hartley Hunt enrolled his 15-year-old daughter in Appalachian Training School in Boone. There she excelled in music, focusing on piano and voice. It was there, of course, that she met handsome Ed Broyhill. And you know, if it wasn't love at first sight for the more sophisticated Sadie, the persistent Ed eventually won her over, as reflected in this homemade valentine Sadie sent to Ed. They were married in Lenoir in 1921 at the Baptist Church, and they honeymooned at Craggy Gardens way above Asheville on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Ed and his older brother Tom went on to establish the Lenoir Furniture Company, which became the hugely successful Broyhill Furniture Industries. Sadie and Ed raised 4 children, Aline, Paul, James, and Betty, all of whom possessed the Broyhill drive and ambition, but also a sense of obligation to the community, passed on by their mother and father. Sadie loved Blowing Rock, and she was involved in the equestrian life of the town. Together, hand in hand, Sadie and Ed Broyhill spent 5 months of the year in Mayview at their summer home, overlooking the beautiful Johns River Gorge. The superlatives used most often to describe Sadie included most generous. She was always giving of herself and her resources. Most energetic. She never seemed to tire. Best natured. She was always in great spirits. Most thoughtful. She was always doing something for other people, especially people in need. She loved meeting new people, and I think it can be truthfully said that she never met a stranger. She loved entertaining, and together Sadie and Ed hosted Bob Doughton, Dwight Eisenhower, Richard Nixon, Barry Goldwater, and many other dignitaries at their Blowing Rock home.
Okay, you know, throughout their lives together, Ed and Sadie Broyhill contributed to so many causes, it's almost impossible to recount them all. You know, of course, we know about Broyhill Lake, we know about the hospital, we know about, of course, their amazing gifts to nearby Appalachian State University, their gifts in this community, the horse show grounds from a Broyhill family. It goes on and on and on. Dozens of community development projects that are so important in enhancing and improving the quality of life here in our beautiful village of Blowing Rock and in dozens of other communities throughout the high country. Sadie herself was on the board of trustees at Appalachian State University for almost a decade, and she was so loved there and appreciated, they named 2 buildings in her honor. Today, The Broyhill Family Foundation, that is headed up by grandson Hunt Broyhill, is continuing that legacy of giving to Blowing Rock and giving to communities and projects throughout the area. It's amazing what has been done. You know, Sadie Hunt Broyhill was a beautiful lady, a kind lady, a loving lady, a lady that never knew a stranger. And we will always remember her with the utmost affection.
Tom, I'm kind of thinking from both a child and a mother's perspective. I don't know how Sadie Broyhill, at 13 years old, left New York with her father, left her mother, and moved to the Blowing Rock area.
You know, that had to have been hard, moving from a metropolitan area like New York to tiny, at the time, Blowing Rock.
At 13.
She was a special lady, though, and maybe it was the school of hard knocks, I don't know, but she turned into one of the kindest, most thoughtful women Blowing Rock's ever seen.
That's what I've heard, and the legacy of the Broyhill family has continued through her all these years. I mean, we're benefiting from it today, which we'll talk about.
They are a special family, and they are still contributing to this community.
They are. Well, let's see who the final queen is.
You know, she was an angel of the gilded leaf. I'm talking about tobacco, of course. Yet her life was one of mystery. She was the heir of both the Reynolds tobacco fortune and Cannon Textiles. She was once dubbed the richest baby in the world. Behind me is her lovely home here in Mayview in Blowing Rock. It was called Far Horizons.
Ann Cannon Reynolds was born in New York in 1930 to Father Zachary Smith Reynolds and Mother Ann Cannon. Her grandfather was R.J. Reynolds of Reynolds Tobacco. Much can and should be said about one of America's most interesting and impactful philanthropists. On her 21st birthday in 1951, she inherited a $9 million estate. Almost immediately, she wrote a letter to the trustees of the fledgling Blowing Rock Hospital, offering a challenge grant of $30,000 to build and equip a new hospital. During the mid-1950s, at the urging of Dr. Charles Devant, Ann Reynolds Tate established college scholarships for deserving Blowing Rock students. For over 2 decades, 2 graduating seniors from Blowing Rock High School received a 4-year, all-expenses-paid scholarship to the college of their choice. For much of her life, Ann loved and owned thoroughbred horses and was a staunch supporter of the Blowing Rock Charity Horse Show. Her love of horses connected her to her first husband, Lloyd Patrick Tate, son of the founder of the Blowing Rock Horse Show. Together they had 2 sons, Zachary Tate and Jock Tate. In 1962, Ann married Dr. Harry Francis Forsyth, and they lived together in Winston-Salem and Blowing Rock. She served as president of both the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation and the North Carolina Fund. In 1967, she established and funded the Ann C. Stouffer Foundation in honor of her mother. You know, in many ways, I think her lasting legacy will be as an educational activist and staunch advocate for racial equality and cultural diversity. Through the Stouffer Foundation alone, she placed 142 black students in 22 preparatory schools throughout the South. She hoped this would contribute to racial integration. As a founding member of the Awards Committee for Education, she helped send 700 black students to summer sessions at colleges and universities throughout the state of North Carolina. She was also a leading contributor to the North Carolina School of the Arts and the Penland School of Crafts. Upon her death in 2003, one of the college scholarship recipients from Blowing Rock, my brother, Dr. Thomas Buxton, had this to say, and I quote, "Mrs. Forsyth totally changed my life trajectory by providing the money to attend Wake Forest University. It's impossible for me to express my gratitude, but I will always remember her kindness and her desire to help the less fortunate."
On a personal note, I met with Ann and Dr. Forsyth in their lovely Winston-Salem home in 1987. Ann and I talked about Blowing Rock back in the old days, and we had a great time visiting about the history of Blowing Rock. I explained to Ann that I was working on a project for Blowing Rock's centennial, a history that would be entitled A Village Tapestry, the History of Blowing Rock. I was there to try to solicit their support. She and Dr. Forsyth said, "We'll think about it and we'll get back to you in a couple of days." Leaving Winston-Salem, I was not really sure if I would hear from her, but sure enough, 2 days later, she contacted to say that yes, she was going to support the project to the tune of a 6-figure amount. With that generous donation, we built Devant Field because we had to play baseball at the old horse show grounds in Blowing Rock. And so that was a great gift to the community and also a tribute to Dr. Devant. But we also worked on the hiking trails and other things in Blowing Rock to enhance our community. You know, I'll always feel personally connected to her. And I hope and believe she will be remembered as a great lady and one of Blowing Rock's most important philanthropists. I'll also remember her as my friend.
Well, this brings us to a close on our Queens of Blowing Rock video series.
I sure hope that all of you have enjoyed this video as much as we have. It's been a lot of fun putting this together.
Oh, it has. And I want to mention a village tapestry. This is the History of Blowing Rock, Dr. Barry Buxton. It's an award-winning book. It's still available. In fact, a bunch more have been printed. You can get them on Amazon. And all of the proceeds from it goes to the Blowing Rock Historical Society.
And we certainly appreciate that, Jean. That helps us do good work for our community.
You're constantly doing, you've got a museum here, you launched the history walk. Lots of good things are happening with the Historical Society.
Right.
In Blowing Rock.
Proceeds from this book have been kind. They've helped us.
Tom, we want to have a special thank you for Douglas Myers of Premier Images. Last year and this year, he's been our videographer, our colleague, our camera person, our kind of everything. Encouraged us. He tries to make us look good.
He really has done a fabulous job, both on the first video, and this video is going to be phenomenal also. Unfortunately, you guys are having to look at Jean and me. Douglas is behind the camera doing a fabulous job for us. Thank you, Douglas.
Really do appreciate him. And also we wanted to encourage you to go to YouTube, the Blowing Rock Historical Society or the Blowing Rock Civic Association websites, and you can watch last year's video series, which was wonderful, featuring the 8 men and their contributions. So we want to encourage you to watch that and perhaps watch this again. This is going to be posted this year on your website.
This will be on all 3 locations again once it's over with.
Okay.
And we also really want to thank Dr. Barry Buxton, who did a lot of work over the winter pulling all of this together. He's done a fabulous job. And the Broyhill Family Foundation, who donated a good bit of money to help us put this together.
Absolutely. And again, get this book too, because this gives you extra information about all the people we've been learning about.
That's true.
Thanks for joining us.
We appreciate you.